guys, welcome back to On the Middle Shelf. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you the books that I read during the month of September. Okay, so during the month of September, I believe I have 11 books on this list, if I counted correctly. We'll see. I have a variety of different genres, age groups. I kind of just have a little bit of it all here, so I'm just going to go in the order that I read the books, and let's just get into this. So the first book that I finished in the month of September is Angels of the Resistance by Noelle Salazar. That is her, not newest, she just had one that released this past week. But before that, it was her newest book. Noelle Salazar is an author that I have found that I really like her writing. This was her second book. Her first book was The Flight Girls. This is Angels of the Resistance. It is a World War II historical fiction book that takes place in Norway, I believe. And it follows two sisters. One is 14 and one is 16. I think, if I'm remembering right, guys, this was the beginning of September, so I'm really pulling at the strings to try to remember some of this stuff, but it follows two sisters, Lene and Elif, who live in Norway, who end up joining, through a series of events, they end up joining the resistance. Their father had taught them as young children how to shoot, and so they end up becoming kind of assassins within the resistance during World War II, and it is a really, really, really good book. I really, really, really like this one. So this one got 4.5 stars for me. Thoroughly enjoyed. If you are into World War II historical fiction, even if you're not, I think Noelle Salazar is kind of an under the radar author that you don't see a whole lot about, and so I would suggest picking up one of her books. All right. After that, I finished Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult. I am not a Jodi Picoult completionist or like a huge, I need to read everything that she writes, but she is on my radar. She did write one of my all-time favorite historical fiction books, The Storyteller. And so I have read a few books by hers that I love and a few books by her that I'm just meh about, and this one unfortunately fell into the meh camp. This is a COVID book, so it is about COVID, and it follows our main character Diana, who is recently engaged or is going to be getting engaged or something along those lines. She has a long-term relationship that she is part of. Her partner is in the medical profession. He's either a doctor or a nurse, or I think he's a doctor. Anyway, and right as COVID is starting, they have a like once in a lifetime trip planned to go to the Galapagos Islands. And he basically says, I can't go. I cannot leave. I have work I have to do, like stuff's hitting the fan. I can't go, but you should go. You get away, you go. And so she goes. And down there kind of ends up stuck and meets new people and kind of rediscovers herself, and then some things happen along the way. I don't know how I felt about this book, guys. I appreciated it for what it was, but at the same time, would I ever read it again? No. The whole like second half of the book, I was just like wah wah about. I enjoyed the first half, but the second half I could have taken it or leaving it. So taken it or left it, that makes more sense. Anyway, so this one got like 2.5, 3 stars for me. All right, after that, I read probably once again, one of my favorite historical fiction books. I have 2 on this list that were 5-star reads, and I have maybe 5 5-star reads for the entire year up till now, and I had 2 on this list, and they're both historical fiction, and I'm so excited that I found 2 more historical fiction that I love as much as I love these 2. But the next one that I finished was Bluebird by Sharon Cree, and I was obsessed with this book. I listened to it and I could not listen fast enough. I didn't want to increase the speed because I didn't want to miss anything, but I just wanted to like keep going. I was ranting and raving to my husband about this book. I'm like, oh my goodness, honey, this book is blowing my mind. And he was like, okay. He's not a big reader, so he knows if I'm going to talk about a book with him, it's one that I love. This book follows Eva, who has, well, it's dual timeline. Let me start there. It's dual timeline, but the timelines are only a year apart. So one of the timelines is like August of 1945, right before the war in Europe ends, for World War II. So right before the war in Europe ends. And then the other timeline is August of 1946. Sorry, oh my goodness, my brain just completely shut off. So 1945 and 1946, following this girl whose father was one of the Nazi officers, and so she has been very indoctrinated with the Nazi way of teaching and just very in it. And then in 1946, you're following her as she is coming over to the United States from Germany, or from Europe, and she is coming to the United States. She has a friend with her, and you're kind of trying to piece together what she's doing. She seems to be on some sort of mission, but you don't really know what it is, and you're just kind of putting pieces together. And so you're getting pieces of the story back and forth and back and forth, and it is amazing. I love it so much. I don't want to say a whole lot more about it before you go into it, because that's part of the fun, is like finding these little bits and pieces out along the way. I didn't really know anything about it going into it, other than I knew it was World War II, and that's really it. And I know Sharon Cameron is Ruta Sepetty's writing partner, and so that for me was enough for me to want to pick her up. And this was just one that was on my list that I had audio access to, or I had access to the audiobook. And so I listened to it, and I am definitely going to be reading more of Sharon Cameron. All right. After that, I read a middle grade graphic novel. I was recommended this, or I got this recommendation from Keisha from A Book Like You. She was ranting and raving about how she had found a new favorite graphic novel, and I was like, wait, what is this? I had never heard of it. It's called Misfit Mansion. It's by Kay DeVault. I don't know if I said that right. And this is about like a foster home of sorts for monsters. So there's all sorts of different kind of monsters living in this house, and they have a caretaker, and we're specifically following one of the monsters, Iris, who we don't really know what type of monster she is, and she is just kind of feeling very at odds with being in the house. She wants to be out of the house. She wants to go explore the towns. She wants to get to know the people in the town that they live near. And everybody else is like, that's a no-no. We cannot do that. And so it kind of follows her experience with that, I'll say. And it was very, very good. The illustrations, the color way, like everything about the graphic novel was so on point for a middle grade graphic novel. And the messaging behind it, the way that the story unfolds, I really, really liked it. And so I think this is going to be a great one for middle graders and adults alike. All right. After that, I listened to Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. I, like in my early 20s, was very into the Duggar family and watching their TV show. I don't say that with a lot of pride at this point in my life, but I was. So throughout the years, I've kind of followed bits and pieces of some of the kids' stories. And I was very interested in this new book coming out by Jill, because it seemed to be sort of like a tell-all about kind of what was going on behind the scenes, and it very much was. This was very much it seemed kind of like this was very much a expose on her father specifically, and all the stuff that he did that she did not agree with, and how she thought that he did her dirty. And that's kind of what it was. It was very one-sided. It's her book. Obviously, it's going to be. She did seem to like give a lot of leeway for her mom and make excuses for her mom, and how her mom was a great mother, and this and that and the other, and solely pinned all the blame for a lot of the decisions that were made on her dad. And that may be the case. I don't know, but it was interesting to read. I read or listened to the entire thing in one day, so it was interesting to read. I enjoyed getting to kind of hear her side of the story and what was happening. She doesn't really talk about any of the stuff with Josh too much. It is in there. You can't escape it really, but it's in there a little bit, but not overbearing. And so yeah, I thought it was a good one. 4 stars for that one. All right, and then after that, I listened to my other 5-star read of the month, another historical fiction, and this is not going to surprise anybody, guys. I finally listened to The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, and I loved that book so much. This is now, so I've read The Nightingale, The Great Alone, and now Four Winds. I haven't read any of her like earlier stuff before The Nightingale. I am now like a diehard. I have loved every single one of her books that I have read, and I cannot wait for her new one to come out. Her new one has to do with Vietnam, and I'm so excited for it too. But this one specifically follows the Dust Bowl, and it follows a woman named Elsa who is kind of, some stuff happens. She ends up by herself with her kids, and she is escaping the Dust Bowl and going to California and trying to find work as a migrant worker in California, following the crops around. And it just has a lot to do with the climate and atmosphere regarding the people that were trying to make it to California and live the American dream and how they were treated. It was very eye-opening. I feel like this book was very poignant for the time that we're in American history today as well. And so Kristen Hanna can tell a tale. I'll say that. And a lot of the characters that were in this book were based off of real people in history, loosely based, I'll say. So loved, 5 stars, hands down. Would definitely recommend to anyone that's looking for something that's not World War II, but likes historical fiction. Okay, after that, I finished Miraculous, which was our middle grade March book club pick for the month of September, and this is by Jess Redman. This follows a little boy named Wonder who experienced a miracle when he was very young and got really into what he called miracology, and which was basically the study of miracles. And he would observe miracles. He would go through the newspaper and document miracles and talk to people about miracles, and he was very obsessed with it. And then his infant sister dies before she even comes home from the hospital. It's something that happens before the book starts. It's off page, but there's definitely discussion about it and that presence throughout the book. So definitely you want to know that going into it. But it has to do with grief and how he is grieving, how his mom is grieving, how his dad is grieving. And he kind of abandons his belief in miracles. And the whole story is about grief and hope, and how people who experience miracles also experience grief and how they go hand in hand. It was very, very well done. It's a very dark, very sad middle grade book, but it's done in such a respectful, meaningful way for kids. And I think that it is just a beautiful, beautiful book on grief. Once again, kids, adults, it doesn't matter. I think that you would really like this. So that was Miraculous by Jess Redman, and I gave this 3.5, 4 stars. All right, after that, I read 2 very short books by Sharon Cree. I read Heartbeat, and then I also read Granny Torelli Makes Soup. These are very, very short books, and I was unhauling a bunch of books, and these were in the pile to unhaul, and I was like, before I actually get rid of them, I do want to read them, so I did. Heartbeat is written in verse. Granny Torelli Makes Soup, I don't believe is. And so Heartbeat follows a little girl, Annie, who likes to run. That's her kind of her release, and she just runs and runs and runs. And so the whole book is just kind of her dealing with some things going on in her family. Her mom gets pregnant, and that's stressing Annie out because she's stressed out about if her mom's going to be able to have a healthy baby. Her grandfather's health is failing, so she's stressed out about that. And then her friend is kind of pulling away from her a little bit in school, and she's stressed out about that as well. And so the whole book is just an exploration of those kind of 3 main topics, also coinciding with her running and wanting to run. And it was beautiful. I really, really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. And then I also read Granny Torelli Makes Soup, and this one follows Rosie and Bailey. Rosie's granny is the one in the title, Making Soup, and it kind of is about her having conversations with her granny over this meal that her granny is preparing, and she's really upset with her best friend. Her best friend lives across the street and is blind. Her and this boy have grown up their entire lives together, and they're kind of at the point where because he's blind, things are different for him, and she doesn't like that she can't be a part of it. And so it's kind of reconciling that we can be friends, but we can also have our own things, and that's okay, because they've always done everything together. And when he tried to learn how to read, or when he learned how to read Braille, she then tried to learn how to read Braille, and he got upset because that was his thing. And so it's kind of that exploration of learning how to share and include people that are outside of that, but also allowing friends to have their own things without you having to be a part of it. And I thought that this was such a good topic for kids. I don't think I've ever seen this really explored in books like it was here, and it was really good. I really liked it. Sharon Cree is very hit or miss for me, and so I'm glad that both of these books were winners. And like I said, very short, like under 2-hour audiobook. So that was a win. All right, I read another middle grade book called The Islands of Elsewhere by Heather Faucet. This is the author of The Grace of Wild Things, which I read during middle grade March earlier this year. And I saw that she had this new book coming out, and it sounded so interesting, and I'm so glad I read it because I really enjoyed it. This book is very much in the vein of like the Vanderbeekers, the Penderwicks, those sorts of books which follow like a sibling group. So this book follows the Snolly sisters. There are 3 sisters, and then they have a baby brother as well. And they have to go during the summer to stay with their grandfather, who is starting to forget things and have a little bit of issues with that. And so they go to stay with their grandfather on in this coastal town, and there are these islands that appear during low tide. And so when it's high tide, they disappear, but when it's low tide, they're there. And there's these stories and all this like lore in the town about these islands that correlates with their grandmother who has passed away. And so they're hearing this from the people in town and from their grandfather about their great grandmother, and why these islands were important to her, and how there may be some mystical things going on. It's very much like a quasi-magical realism book. There are like witchy vibes to it, but it was so fun and so good, and I really enjoy Heather Faucet's writing. It just has this imagination to it that I loved, and I enjoyed the Penderwicks. I enjoyed the Vanderbeekers. They weren't anything like mind-blowing to me. I really, really enjoyed this, and I just thought it was so fun and different as well. And yeah, highly, highly recommend The Islands of Elsewhere. And then the last book that I finished in September is a YA book, and that is Rain by Katharine McGee. This is the final book in the American Royals series by Katharine McGee, and it just wraps up the storyline. So the American Royal series is a story that is as if the United States were a monarchy instead of a democracy. And so there was a king and a queen, and it follows the kids, they're like in their 20s, that are next in line for the throne. So that's the first book. So there's 3 kids. You have Beatrice, who is next in line for the throne. She's the oldest. And then you have her 2 siblings. And so you're getting multiple points of view from Beatrice, from her sister, from her sister's name is Samantha, and her brother's name is, I don't remember. It's something like that has to do with the Revolutionary War, I'm sure. Anyway, so you're getting her point of view, Beatrice's point of view, you're getting Sam's point of view, and then you're also getting like the brother's girlfriend's point of view and the sister's best friend's point of view and stuff like that. So people that are like around the royal family as well. And so end of book 1, all cliffhangers, no resolution at all. But by the end of book 4, everything gets resolved, and it's just kind of royal drama, and I was here for it. I love this series. I thought it was so fun. I am a sucker for just a smidge of the dramatic. you know, it's fine. And so I really, really like this one. So anyway, those are the 11 books that I read during the month of September. If you've read any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about them down below in the comment section. And also let me know what you're planning on reading in October. I would love to know that as well. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.